What's up, Ron?
Hey, Nick, I was at Canland Ice Sports last night. We were watching the
There you go.
game with 19 pounds of chicken wings. Our team ordered
Ooh.
some kind of a sale they had. I mean, honest to God, they were like cinnamon buns, some of the wings. Got through them and got through that game, and I loved your comments. The only thing, Jay, I can figure, and I couldn't agree more, because they brought in 6 new bodies at trade deadline. They do not look like a cohesive unit. What a way to start a road trip. They'll be all
Yeah.
bickering or questioning themselves as they head on down for the next 3 games. So it didn't have a good feel at all. But the one thing that's kind of in the back of my mind is they close with 8 games and 13 nights in April. They have a frantic April just ahead of the Stanley Cup. So to your point about perhaps, Sheldon's thinking, I got to just kind of, give Gio a day off here, Shen it, they're older guys, to avoid injury, because I'm going to need them, but it's risky. Really, your word is arrogant, and it's not a bad word, because they just, and when you see the Islanders, that's a playoff style team, right? So there,
Yeah.
to me, Cal Clutterbuck is kind of a Brad Marchand, not to put him quite in that league, but God, he's good. I've skated with him in St. Catharines and charity games, and he's like yourself or any other NHLer. Suddenly, it's like you're with Gretzky. He was really good last night, and he looked playoffs. That line looked playoffs. That defense for the Islanders looked playoffs, and the goaltending. So that was a test for Toronto, and I think you're right. The blender killed it.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand. I believe that the Maple Leafs are a better team than that, and you're going up against a team with a solid forecheck, with a pretty deep lineup, and they're clawing and scratching for their life. I mean, I think they had a real bad January that kind of got them out of the playoff picture, and they're trying to get their way back in there. And if you think you're just gonna kind of mess around and sit some guys and blah blah, you can't just keep taking these L's and losing your identity as a team and then just flip a switch in the playoffs. I mean, you know as well as anybody that that's just not what happens in this league. There's really no one that's that good, especially in the Stanley Cup playoffs where everything gets ramped up 3-4-fold. It's just too risky. You gotta, I mean, and to try to protect against injuries and stuff like that. I mean, when you're out there playing and you're trying to like stay away from the dirty areas and you're trying not to get hurt, that's when you
Right.
get hurt. You just got to go out there and play hockey. And I don't know if that's the plan or not, but it did not look good last night at all.
I always go back to Pittsburgh rolled into the 93 playoffs as the 2-time champions. They won 17 in a row to end the regular season, and then they got all banged up. They ended up with
Yeah.
Mario hurt and Yager hurt, and everybody was hurt. So Stevens got hurt badly with Rich Pilon, remember? That's a little bit the Stanley Cup playoffs as well. I thought back last night as I look at Long Island. I always remember Pat Quinn. Unfortunately, bless his heart, he went to write Robert Reichel into the starting lineup, and he put Michael Renberg by mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And Renberg had to go or Reichel had to go to the dressing room in one of the greatest, dirtiest looks you've ever seen in hockey. And then Alan McCauley ended up double shifting because Matt Sundin was also on the shelf, and that was in the first round. And Toronto went on a tear and went to the third round of the playoffs. So you never know, but I do look at that April schedule, and the only good thing is they have a lot of games to seal home ice because they're going to need it against Tampa.
It's funny, Ron. I was thinking when you were coming on today, just the market and the pressure cooker that we live in and broadcast from here in Toronto. You've been in this market for so long. What can you say about like every loss, every waking loss people are tied on, even on social media, as I referenced earlier on, people going nuts over a meaningless loss, I like to call it, against the New York Islanders in the month of March.
Well, first of all, Nick, one of the things that you discuss a lot, and I think obviously you and Jay would have this zest, but the idea of argument. I do think there's a lot to be said for what we would call narrative tension. If everybody's just getting along, it is kind of boring. And I'll tell you a story about a teacher was sent down into Tempe, Arizona, to teach at a school. She was a Harvard graduate in education, and she was, the typical outsider brought in to solve problems. This was a school specifically for students who'd been expelled from other schools, juvenile offenders, really rough kids in a black neighborhood of Tempe, Arizona called Helena. And she was trying to teach them, resilience and pride in Barack Obama or Malcolm X or Martin Luther King Jr. Nothing. The kids weren't paying attention. She had a lot of policies about raise your hand. If you have to go to the washroom, don't put your head on the desk or you're going to get a 0 on your exam. And finally, she played, or she didn't play. She read them. A Raisin in the Sun was a great play by a woman named Lorraine Hansberry. And in that play, the husband and wife are arguing and bickering all the time, and the grandmother's yelling and screaming. And kids loved it because it kind of reminded them of their scene of home, and things that they'd been through. And so I think, a roundabout way, what I'm trying to say, Nick, is when you're in Twitter war, I don't go there because it's just, honestly, I can't possibly, and then, not to sound like Hockey Night in Canada is the biggest deal in the world, but if I get in shit, all of a sudden it's the Globe and Mail and the CBC National News, and I'm trying to deal with that. And then it becomes a sideshow to what we're, trying to do. So I got to be very careful, but you shouldn't be. And you should continue to stir the pot. And I think we all enjoy that, deep down. That's kind of the bickering or the panics, the sky's falling, are part of the joy of it all, to be truthful.
Well, it's funny because me and Nick do go back and forth sometimes and have differing opinions, and our backgrounds are different as far as how we've interacted with this team. And we've almost kind of flip-flopped sometimes. And I've noticed that the fans on the Twitter, I'm new to it too, Ron, and I'm getting a taste for what it's all about being on Twitter, especially following this team. A lot of passion, but it's been like this year has been almost different, where they used to, the sky is falling after every loss and the wins are meaningless, and now all of a sudden the losses are meaningless and the sky is falling after every win because something wasn't perfect and they just can't make up their mind. But what do you think this team needs to do to get over that hump? I mean, it's just glaringly obvious that the first round is the hump they need to get over. I believe they have had better teams in the past than the teams they've played, and they still lose. What does this team have to do here?
I think, Jay, and you tell me, but I just think they need the right save at the right time. So last night, as an example, when Liljegren coughs it up, I want that save. Of all the things I think about with Dominik Hasek, especially when he played for the Ottawa Senators, I'd see Yashin try something, dipsy doodle at his own blue line, break away the other way, and not a chance you're beating Hasek. He would always pick up the guy that made that screw up. And I think that'll be the key. They haven't been able to get that save in the Columbus series in the bubble. In the, Freddie Anderson's, he was a great goalie, but that just one shot from far right boards was kind of reminded me of Lalime allowing a far right board shot to Joe Nieuwendyk, I think it was, might have been Gary Roberts. And that save, without it, you're not going to get over the hump. So it's going to be on Matt Murray. And you talked about this the other day that, he looks like he's a two-time winner. So the guys will have faith that he knows how to perform under pressure. I hate to load it up on him, but I do want to see that save when this mix and match defense is sorting it out. They're going to need they're going to need a huge save, the same kind of saves that Vasilevsky and the other thing about that is, the defense is such an interesting recipe all the time. When Rafalski came to Detroit, problems solved. Now you had Lidstrom and Rafalski, and they had a great defense, deep defense. Tampa loses Ryan McDonough, and they're not quite the same. Boston adds Hampus Lindholm, and look. So I do think that's still an outlier for Toronto. Have they, bringing in Matthias Ekholm and Edmonton? Wow. So, Edmonton, I think, is a deep, deep threat to go to the Stanley Cup on the other side. But for Toronto, a big save, and can that defense, because when I think about that, I'm rambling here, but when I think about I think it was 99, they had like Sylvain Cote and Dmitry Yaskevich and Karpatsev, and Brian Berard was on that team. It wasn't like, Edmonton won a cup in 90 with what you wouldn't say a no-name defense, but not a famous defense. And so you can do it. But to your, again, argument, okay, settle on Shen or somebody and let them, find their game.
We got to put an APB out there for Connor Timmins as well. I haven't seen that guy in a couple of weeks. And to your point, exactly what I was thinking about Ilya Sorokin, man. He was just tremendous last night. That save on Eric Gustafsson. You need that save to get your team over the hump, whether it's Darcy Kemper in last year's Stanley Cup playoffs or a guy like Andrei Vasilevsky who has done it so many, many years before. So we know it's going to be Toronto and Tampa. That's been signed, sealed, and delivered for a couple months. But in your opinion, Ron, who is the biggest, most important player for the Maple Leafs as we enter this series here against Tampa Bay Lightning?
That's it has to be Matthews. He engineered that 3-2 goal last night. I know Mitch is brilliant. Mitch is kind of the Kucherov of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Hart Trophy caliber, brilliant. But I think as Stamkos goes, although they won a cup without him, so I shouldn't, I guess, be saying that. I just think Austin, he feels like the smile that says it all, relieves all tension. When he's in order, then everybody else can kind of relax. So it felt like he is finding his groove. That's extremely important. And yeah, I would say Matthews.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to win on one guy getting hot. The
No.
teams that go deep in the playoffs, they have that depth, and I think the Leafs have learned that in the past, where you can't just say, "Okay, $10 million guy, go win this thing for us." It doesn't really work like that, especially in the playoffs. I think they've done a great job getting deeper. I think they can get that big save now, and I mean, standing on a bench like that game last night, when you get those big saves that you're talking about, the bench almost feels like, okay, like we got let off the hook. That was their push. Now let's solve this problem. Let's take it to them now. We've gotten off the hook here. And the other team's going, man, we've been peppering this guy. And are you kidding me? That one didn't go in. And it can just be a big save like that can just really turn the momentum of a game around. And I think they can get that out there. But obviously yet to be seen. I think so many people are waiting in this country with bated breath for this playoffs, and we can't wait. But we need your prediction, Ron, this year. Do the Toronto Maple Leafs get out of the first round?
Yeah, I do feel like things are pointing in the right direction. I think Tampa's, I wouldn't say they're on the downslide permanently, but they just look like they've kind of had their fill for a bit. They don't look as quite on the bit like they did. I wouldn't underestimate them, that's for sure. And they still have a really big, tough to play against defense. Hedman's special and Sergachev and Chernak. So it won't be easy, that's for sure. But I think Murray's up to the task if he's on to match Vasilevsky. And I do think that bitter pill in the mouths of those Leafs, what they've experienced is every team reaches that, so fed up that they'll go through the wall to win. And I do think little things. Nylander going off the ice unhappy last night. I thought your point was good about Keefe kind of sending a message that screw you guys, I'm pulling the goalie with 7 to go because you've quit. And back to that save thing again. I already mentioned the
Yeah.
Liljegren turnover and the fashion goal, but same when Mitch Marner, your guy, your top guy this year, when he tries to feed Morgan Riley, and then he bumped into Gustafsson, had already planted up at the far blue line, so that neither D is hinging. So the only guy that can hinge is the guy that made the pass, and he did a good job to get back and make it interesting. But just a brilliant shot by Clutterbuck, and didn't get the save right that they needed. So. That'll be a key. I do feel like it's going to happen though. I have I do have a kind of sense that we're pointing towards I don't know how you beat Boston. I really don't, but I have a feeling that Toronto and Edmonton are going to make some real noise this spring.